day started like any other, with the sun streaming through our bedroom window, illuminating the dust particles that danced in the air. I stretched and rolled over, expecting to find my wife, Sarah, still asleep beside me. But the bed was cold and an unsettling sense of dread washed over me. I got up, brushed my teeth, and made my way to the kitchen, the smell of coffee brewing filling the air. It was a comforting aroma, one that usually signaled a good day ahead. But that morning, something felt off. As I poured myself a cup, I noticed her phone lying face down on the counter. Instinctively, I picked it up, half expecting to see a message from a friend or a reminder about our weekend plans. Instead, I found a series of texts that would shatter my world. They were from my college professor, Dr. Grant, a man I had always respected and admired. The messages were flirtatious and intimate, filled with inside jokes and a level of familiarity that made my stomach churn. My heart raced as I read them, each word piercing deeper into my chest. Betrayal, anger, confusion, it was all there, swirling in a storm of emotions that left me breathless. I dropped the phone as if it were a live wire, my mind racing back to all the moments I had shared with Sarah. The laughter, the warmth, the promises we made to each other. How could she do this to me? How could she betray our love with a man who was supposed to be a mentor? I felt a mix of rage and despair, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the counter. The kitchen, once a sanctuary of shared breakfasts and laughter, felt like a prison of my own making, a place where I would confront the truth. I wanted to scream, to confront her right then and there, but I knew I needed to gather my thoughts. Instead, I took a deep breath and walked outside. The fresh air hit me like a slap, but I needed clarity. I paced the yard, replaying memories in my head. I thought about our wedding day, the way she looked in her dress, the way she promised to love me forever. I thought about the late-night talks, the dreams we shared, and how I had always supported her ambitions, even when they took her away from me. But now all I felt was inadequacy. What had I done wrong? Was I not enough? The questions gnawed at me, consuming my thoughts. I felt like a fool for trusting her, for believing that our love was unshakable. But I couldn't dwell on that. I had to do something. I had to make her understand the gravity of her betrayal. The thought of revenge began to creep into my mind, wrapping around my heart. It was a dark and twisted notion, but the more I thought about it, the more it took root. Dr. Grant had taken something precious from me, and I could not sit idly by. No, I needed to act. I needed to show him the consequences of his actions, to make him pay for what he had done. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue across the yard, I felt a sense of purpose awaken within me. I was no longer just a victim. I was a man wronged, ready to reclaim my dignity. I would not let this betrayal define me. I would make sure Dr. Grant faced the repercussions of his actions, and I would do it in a way that would leave a lasting mark. I went back inside, my heart pounding with anticipation and anger. I knew I was on the brink of a decision that could change everything. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, but I was ready to embrace the darkness. This was just the beginning. In the days that followed the discovery, I felt like I was living in a fog. Each morning I would wake up with the weight of betrayal pressing down on my chest, and each night I would lie awake, replaying the moment I found Sarah's phone over and over in my mind. I tried to act normal, to carry on with my routine, but inside I was a volcano ready to erupt. My thoughts were consumed by images of Sarah with Dr. Grant, his hand on her waist, their laughter echoing in the air, the way she must have looked at him with the same love she once had for me. It was unbearable. At work, I couldn't focus. My colleagues noticed my distraction, but I brushed off their concerns with half-hearted excuses. I felt like a ghost in my own life, moving through the motions while my mind spiraled into a dark abyss. I would sit at my desk, staring blankly at the screen, my heart racing with anger and hurt. I wanted to confront Sarah, to demand answers, but a part of me was terrified of what I might hear. What if she tried to justify her actions? What if she claimed it was just a fling? I couldn't bear the thought. Instead, I began to plot. The idea of revenge took on a life of its own, becoming a twisted source of solace. I envisioned Dr. Grant's life unraveling, his career crumbling before him, and the thought sent a thrill of satisfaction through me. I wanted him to feel the same pain I felt, the same sense of betrayal and loss. I wanted him to understand that his actions had consequences, that he couldn't just waltz into my life and take what was mine. As the days turned into weeks, I started gathering information. I reached out to old friends from college, some of whom had connections in the academic world. I wanted to know everything about Dr. Grant, his professional reputation, his accomplishments, and any skeletons he might have hidden in his closet. I spent hours online, searching for articles, papers, and anything that could give me leverage. Each piece of information I uncovered fueled my determination. I was becoming a man on a mission, driven by a singular focus. One evening, as I sat in front of my computer, I stumbled upon a forum discussing professors who had faced allegations of misconduct. My heart raced as I read through the posts. Many of them were stories of ruined careers and lives, and I realized that I could use this to my advantage. I could expose Dr. Grant for what he was, a man who preyed on his students, someone who took advantage of his position of power. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, but it was exhilarating. I began to draft an anonymous email detailing my claims against him. I thought about how Sarah would react if she knew what I was planning. Would she be horrified? Would she try to defend him? The thought of her disappointment only fueled my resolve. I was determined to make her see the consequences of her actions, to show her that she couldn't just betray me without repercussions. As I wrote, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. I was no longer the victim. I was taking control of my narrative. I focused on the details, making sure my claims were specific and credible. I included references to his inappropriate texts with Sarah, emphasizing how he had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. With each word, I felt lighter, as if I were shedding the burden of betrayal that had weighed me down for so long. When I finally hit send, a rush of adrenaline coursed through me. I felt both exhilarated and terrified. What if it backfired? What if it didn't have the desired effect? But I pushed those doubts aside. I was committed now, ready to see this through to the end. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had crossed a line. But the pain of Sarah's betrayal was still fresh, and the thought of Dr. Grant's downfall brought a twisted sense of satisfaction. I was ready to face the consequences of my actions, whatever they might be. The storm inside me was raging, and I wasn't about to back down. The days following my anonymous email felt like an eternity. Each morning, I'd wake up with a knot in my stomach, unsure of what the repercussions would be. I felt like a tightrope walker, balancing precariously between revenge and remorse. Part of me was exhilarated by the prospect of Dr. Grant facing consequences, while another part was terrified of what I had set in motion. Would he retaliate? Would Sarah find out what I had done? I spent hours lost in thought, my mind racing with possibilities. I kept an eye on the news and the academic forums, waiting for something to break. I wanted to see his name in headlines, to hear about his downfall. But the first few days passed without incident, and I began to feel anxious. Had my email fallen on deaf ears? Was I too late to make a difference? I felt like a hunter waiting for his prey, the anticipation gnawing at me. Then, one afternoon, as I was scrolling through my social media feed, I saw it. A post from a former student of Dr. Grant, sharing a story about his inappropriate behavior. It was like a spark igniting a fire. Other students began to chime in with their experiences, recounting similar tales of misconduct and abuse of power. I felt a rush of vindication. I wasn't alone in my fight. This was bigger than me. The floodgates had opened, and I knew I had played a part in this awakening. As the stories began to circulate, I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me. Dr. Grant's reputation was in jeopardy, and I couldn't help but imagine the panic that must be setting in. I envisioned him sitting at his desk, reading the same posts I had seen, his face paling as he realized the implications. I felt a dark thrill at the thought of him squirming, his life unraveling before him. The more I thought about it, the more my resolve solidified. This felt like justice, but with the excitement came a wave of guilt. I had initiated this chain reaction, and I couldn't ignore that. I thought about Sarah, about how she would feel if she knew I was behind it all. Would she see me as a monster? Or would she understand my pain? I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, but I didn't want to lose her entirely. I was torn between the desire for revenge and the love I still felt for her. I decided to confront her to gauge her reaction to the unfolding drama. I needed to know where she stood, what she felt about Dr. Grant now that his secrets were coming to light. One evening I sat her down, my heart pounding as I prepared to broach the subject. "Sarah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "have you heard about what's happening with Dr. Grant?" Her eyes widened in surprise. "What do you mean?" she asked, her brow furrowing. "There are allegations against him. People are coming forward about his behavior," I explained, watching her reaction closely. For a moment she looked lost, as if trying to process the information. Then her expression shifted to one of worry. "What kind of allegations?" I hesitated, weighing my words carefully. "Inappropriate relationships with students, texts, things that cross the line." Her face paled, and I could see the realization dawn on her. "Oh God," she whispered, her voice shaking. I had no idea it was that serious. I felt a wave of anger surge within me. Was she really that naive? Did she think it was just harmless flirting? "You had an affair with him, Sarah. You were part of this mess." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as emotions played across her face, shock, guilt, and something else I couldn't quite place. I didn't think it would go this far. I thought it was just a mistake. "A mistake?" I echoed incredulously. "You think cheating on your husband is just a mistake?" Tears filled her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. I wanted her to feel my pain, to understand the depth of my betrayal. "You need to take responsibility for your actions, Sarah. You can't just brush this off." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away, unwilling to let her comfort me. "What do you want me to say?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry, I regret it, I didn't mean to hurt you." I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "It's not enough. You need to understand the consequences of what you did." As I watched the realization sink in, I felt a strange sense of power. I was no longer the victim. I was in control of my own narrative. I had turned the tables, and now it was her turn to face the fallout from her choices. But as I walked away from that conversation, a nagging feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. I had unleashed a storm, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it would come back to haunt me. The fallout from my decision to expose Dr. Grant was swift and brutal. Within days, the academic community was abuzz with rumors and allegations. I watched as the news spread like wildfire, igniting a firestorm of controversy. Students began to rally, sharing their stories and demanding accountability. It was almost surreal to witness, knowing that I had played a crucial role in igniting this movement. But with every passing moment, I felt the weight of my actions pressing down on me. Dr. Grant's name was everywhere, on social media, in news articles, and within the halls of the university. I could only imagine the chaos he was experiencing. I envisioned him packing his office, his mind racing as he tried to figure out how to salvage his reputation. The thrill of knowing I had a hand in his downfall was intoxicating, yet it was also laced with an unsettling sense of dread. I had crossed a line, and I was beginning to feel the repercussions of that choice. Sarah's reaction to the unfolding events was complicated. At first, she was shocked and distraught, caught in the whirlwind of emotions that came with the revelation of her affair. She frequently reached out to me, her voice tinged with desperation as she tried to find a way to mend our broken relationship. But with each attempt, I felt my resolve harden. I could see the guilt etched on her face, but I was no longer interested in comforting her. I wanted her to understand the depth of her betrayal, to feel the same pain I had endured. One evening, as I sat alone in our living room, I received a call from one of my old college friends, Jenna. She had been following the news and wanted to talk. "I can't believe what's happening with Dr. Grant," she said, her voice filled with concern. "Are you okay? This must be really hard for you." I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "It's complicated," I admitted. "I feel like I've been thrust into this whirlwind and I'm not sure how to navigate it." "Have you talked to Sarah about it?" she asked gently. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "We've had some conversations, but it's difficult. I want her to feel the weight of her actions, but I also don't want to lose her completely." Jenna was quiet for a moment, and I could hear the concern in her voice when she spoke again. You have every right to be angry, but don't let this consume you. Revenge can be a double-edged sword. Her words struck a chord within me. I had been so focused on Dr. Grant's downfall that I hadn't considered the full implications of my actions. Revenge was intoxicating, but it also had the potential to destroy everything I held dear. I didn't want to lose Sarah, but I felt trapped between my desire for justice and my lingering love for her. As the weeks passed, the situation escalated. Dr. Grant was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation, and the pressure was mounting. I could feel the tension in the air, and it was hard to escape the reality of what I had done. I was living in a world of chaos where every decision felt monumental. One night, Sarah confronted me again. She looked tired, her eyes red from crying. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "About what?" I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "About us. About what's happening with Dr. Grant. I know you're hurting, but I'm hurting too. This is tearing me apart." I studied her face, searching for any sign of sincerity. "You brought this on yourself, Sarah. You made your choices, and now we're dealing with the consequences." "I know," she said, her voice breaking, "but I want to make it right. I want to fix this." I felt a surge of anger. "How can you fix this? You betrayed me. You betrayed our marriage." "I didn't mean for it to happen," she pleaded. "It was a mistake, and I regret it every day, but I want to fight for us. I want to rebuild what we had." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a flicker of hope, mixed with skepticism. Could we truly rebuild after this? I wanted to believe it was possible, but the scars of betrayal ran deep. "Why should I believe you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "How can I trust you again?" "I'll do whatever it takes," she said, her eyes pleading. "I'll go to counseling. I'll be open and honest. Just give me a chance." I felt torn. Part of me wanted to reach out, to comfort her and reassure her that everything would be okay. But another part of me was still consumed by anger and hurt. I had fought so hard to reclaim my dignity, and now I was faced with the prospect of forgiveness. "I need time," I finally said, my voice heavy with uncertainty. "I can't just forget what happened." As I watched her nod, a deep sense of conflict settled over me. I had set this chain of events in motion, and now I was grappling with the consequences of my own actions. I wanted to see Dr. Grant suffer, but at what cost? I realized revenge was a slippery slope, and I had to be careful not to lose myself in the process. The storm was far from over, and I was left to navigate the chaos I had created. As the weeks dragged on, the investigation into Dr. Grant's conduct unfolded like a slow-motion train wreck. News outlets continued to report on the allegations, and the university was forced to respond to the growing outcry for accountability. I watched as the man who had once been a figure of authority and respect was reduced to a cautionary tale, a pariah in the academic world. It was intoxicating to see him suffer, but as the initial thrill faded, I began to feel the weight of my actions pressing down on me more heavily. Sarah and I were stuck in a limbo of awkward conversations and strained silences. She was doing everything she could to mend our relationship, attending counseling sessions and being open about her feelings. But each time I looked at her, I was reminded of her betrayal. I could see the guilt etched across her face, but I was still grappling with my own emotions. The anger that had fueled my revenge was now mixed with confusion, and I was left questioning everything I thought I knew about love and trust. One evening, after a particularly tense day at work, I came home to find Sarah waiting for me in the living room. She had lit candles and prepared a simple dinner, an attempt to create a sense of normalcy amidst the chaos. But as I sat across from her, the weight of unspoken words hung in the air. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. "About what?" I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "About the investigation. I think it's important that we discuss what's happening with Dr. Grant and how it affects us." I sighed, feeling a mix of frustration and sadness. What's there to discuss? He's facing the consequences of his actions, and it's about time. "Maybe, but it's more complicated than that," she continued, her eyes pleading. "I need you to understand that I never wanted any of this to happen. I was scared and confused, and I made a terrible mistake." "Scared? Confused?" I echoed incredulously. "You don't just cheat on your husband because you're scared. You made a choice, Sarah." I know, and I'm not trying to. Excuse my behavior, she said, her voice trembling. I just want you to see how much I regret it. I want to make things right, but I can't do that if you're still consumed by anger. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I was angry, but I was also hurt, deeply hurt. I had spent so much time focusing on Dr. Grant's downfall that I had neglected to confront my own feelings about Sarah and our relationship. I don't know if I can just forgive and forget, I finally admitted, my voice cracking. What you did, it shattered my trust in you. I understand, she said softly, but I'm willing to fight for us. I want to rebuild what we had brick by brick. I'm committed to making this work, and I hope you can find it in your heart to try. As I looked into her eyes, I saw the sincerity in her expression. It was a small glimmer of hope, but it was overshadowed by the memories of betrayal. I felt torn between the desire to move forward and the fear of being hurt again. Maybe we need to set some boundaries, I suggested, my mind racing. If we're going to try to fix this, we need to be honest about what we want. Absolutely, she agreed, her face lighting up with relief. I'm open to whatever it takes, just tell me what you need. I thought for a moment, weighing my options. I need time to process everything. I need to understand why you made the choices you did and what that means for us moving forward. Of course, she said, her voice filled with understanding. I'll do anything to help you heal. Just know that I'm here and I want to make this right. As we sat in silence, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps there was a path forward for us, but it would take time, effort, and honesty. I wasn't ready to fully forgive her, but I was willing to explore the possibility of rebuilding our relationship. Meanwhile, the investigation into Dr. Grant continued to unfold. The university announced that they would be holding a formal hearing to address the allegations against him, and the pressure was mounting. I felt a mix of satisfaction and unease. He was facing the consequences of his actions, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was becoming entangled in a web of chaos that was spiraling out of control. As the hearing approached, I found myself grappling with my own emotions. I had wanted revenge, but now I was beginning to question if it was worth the toll it had taken on my life. The thrill of Dr. Grant's downfall was fading, replaced by a sense of emptiness. I realized that my quest for revenge had come at a cost. My relationship with Sarah was hanging by a thread, and I was left wondering if I could ever truly forgive her. The night before the hearing, I lay awake, my mind racing. I thought about the life I had once envisioned with Sarah, the dreams we had shared, and the love that had brought us together. I felt a surge of determination. I needed to confront my own feelings and decide what I truly wanted. The next day, as the hearing loomed, I prepared myself for whatever was to come. I would stand by my choices, but I would also be ready to face the consequences of my actions. I was on the brink of a new chapter, and I needed to be sure of the path I was choosing. The day of the hearing arrived, and I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The atmosphere was charged with tension as students and faculty gathered, all eager to hear the details of the allegations against Dr. Grant. I arrived early, taking a seat at the back of the auditorium, my heart racing as I scanned the crowd. I could see Sarah sitting a few rows ahead, her face pale and drawn. I wanted to reach out to her, to reassure her, but I was still grappling with the storm of emotions inside me. As the hearing began, I listened intently to the testimonies being shared. Former students spoke out about their experiences, recounting the inappropriate comments and advances Dr. Grant had made. Each story was a painful reminder of the betrayal I had endured, and I felt a surge of anger for all the lives he had affected. But as the testimonies continued, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. This was not just about revenge anymore. It was about real people who had suffered because of one man's actions. When it was finally Dr. Grant's turn to speak, I felt a wave of anticipation wash over the room. He walked in with an air of arrogance that made my blood boil. As he began to defend himself, I could see the cracks in his facade. He tried to downplay the allegations, casting doubt on the testimonies of the students who had bravely come forward. But the more he spoke, the more I felt a sense of vindication. This was a man who had manipulated his power for far too long, and now he was being held accountable. As the hearing progressed, I found myself reflecting on my own choices. I had wanted to see him suffer, to ruin his life for what he had done to me and to Sarah. But now, witnessing the pain and courage of those who spoke out, I realized that revenge was not the answer. It was a hollow victory that would not bring me peace. Instead, I wanted to focus on healing, on rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. After the hearing, I found Sarah waiting for me outside the auditorium. Her eyes were filled with tears, and I could see the weight of the day pressing down on her. "How are you holding up?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. "I don't know," she replied, her voice trembling. "Hearing those stories, it's heartbreaking. I feel so ashamed." I took a deep breath, feeling the tension between us. "You should feel ashamed, Sarah. What you did was wrong, and you need to take responsibility for it." "I know," she said, looking down. "But I want to make it right. I want to be better." I studied her face, searching for sincerity. "I want that too, but it's going to take time. Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight." "I understand," she said, her voice steady. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I love you and I want to fight for us." In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could find a way forward together. It wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to try. I just needed to be honest with myself about my feelings and the path I wanted to take. As we walked away from the auditorium, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. The chaos that had consumed my life for the past few months was beginning to settle. I had taken steps to confront my pain and seek justice, but now it was time to focus on healing. I needed to let go of the anger that had driven me for so long and embrace the possibility of forgiveness. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and I began to rebuild our relationship, brick by brick. We attended counseling sessions together, where we learned to communicate openly about our feelings. It was a slow process, filled with ups and downs, but I could feel the foundation of trust starting to take shape again. I began to understand that love was not just about the absence of betrayal. It was about the willingness to confront pain and work through it together. Dr. Grant's fate was ultimately decided by the university. He was dismissed from his position, facing the consequences of his actions. I felt a sense of closure as I learned of his downfall, but I also realized that my quest for revenge had come at a cost. It had consumed me, and in the end, it was not worth the toll it took on my relationship with Sarah. As I looked back on the entire experience, I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, but also relief. I had confronted my pain, sought justice, and ultimately chosen the path of healing. I learned that betrayal could shatter trust, but it could also serve as a catalyst for growth and understanding. In the end, I emerged from the storm with a renewed sense of purpose. I had faced my demons, confronted the darkness, and chosen to embrace the light. I realized that love was not just about trust. It was about resilience and the willingness to fight for what truly mattered. And as I stood hand in hand with Sarah, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew that we had the strength to rebuild our love, stronger than before. With each passing day, I felt the weight of the past lifting, replaced by the promise of a new beginning. It was a journey filled with uncertainty, but it was also a journey worth taking. And as I looked into Sarah's eyes, I knew that together, we could navigate the complexities of love and trust, emerging stronger and more united than ever before. This was not the end of our story, it was just the beginning. Thank you for following my journey.